Okay, so good evening, everybody. Yeshukayach for the opportunity, and I would like to learn tonight a maimer in Lekutei Torah, the last maimer on the parsha. The Dibur HaMaskil is Eretz Horim, but I'd like to begin first with a Hanocha, which the Rebbe is Mitzayin to connect with this maimer. So let's take a look. So we'll learn this inside, and we'll have something bayad. Once we have that, then we could shmooze a little.
By the way.
Huh? Which maimer is in Dvar Malchus? Really? So he says like this: Midas chazdoi shel Avram. I'm looking in the Hanocha. Okay. Midas chazdoi shel Avram. The way Avram Avinu expedited Chesed, ka'omroi, like the pasuk says, v'anoichi ofar v'efer. In other words, Avraham embodies Chesed. And what does he say? V'anoichi ofar v'efer. Ukolam mamish nechshav. He's like worthless in his eyes. Imkein. Memele hu k'shirayim. If he's nothing. So everything else comes before him. He comes after everyone else. When there's a smorgasbord and a line, he waits till everybody else gets, and he only goes at the end to take the leftovers. And then he says like this: V'yaspik loy kol mashe yeshar. Whatever's left over is enough, because they're garnished. So he's not picky. Right? And he's going to say in a minute, of course he's going to be sameach bechelkoi too. Ve'eich lo yitein mima shenishpa lo chesed v'toiv ma. How is it in such a position? Of course he's going to share what he has. He feels so unworthy. Whatever he has, he's going to share with someone else. Ve'eisech chesed lekulam. Right? So he's not picky about to whom. He's going to explain that when it comes to Yishmael is only kind to those people who are bottled to him. If you toe the line, then I'll be kind to you. But that's not Avram. He's Eiseh Chesed Lekulam. Ume'at hanishar loi, the little bit that he remains with, mechuyev gamkein sheyismach bechelkai. Obviously, mechuyev means it's compelled. Naturally, he's also sameach bechelkai. Ve'yaspik loy, it's enough. Me'achar shehu ofar ve'efer. So there are a few things here that he expressed a few things, and he's gonna deepen it. He takes it further. He'll also explain that because Avram is ofar ve'efer, he gives away from his hechrechius. He gives away from his basic needs. Masha'enkein Yishmael only gives from what he has extra after he's taken care of. Then he has extra, then there's now Vayidei Abirur, through what's the pshat Vayidei Abirur? Vayidei Abirur means the junk that remains after the birur. The psoiles after the birur, yatsa mimenu Yishmael. There's Yishmael. And by Yishmael, his midas hachesed is completely the opposite. Ashegamhu pazron, he also throws around money. He's also a spender. Ochein, however, shar shehu mishvires hakelim, shenoflu lemata. In other words, indeed, his shaydish is chesed. But it's the way it's nofa lamato. So ochein pazronus. Why does he spend his money? Bechdei laharois es oshrei, to show people how rich he is. That's why he spends money. V'reiv godlei, how great he is. Umachmas roichav levavai, he's so generous. Hu mashpia bechdei sheyeh loi l'shem ultiferes. He should be renowned. He should be an impressive guy. People say, "Oh, this guy, he made a chasana. It was unbelievable." So you should see the appliances in his house. v'nimtza memela. Being that that's the purpose, being that the purpose of the hashpah is in order to promote himself, so therefore memela naturally she'einoi mashpia rak me'amoisros. It's only there from what remains sheyishoyer achar sheyamale taivus levavai. It's after he already ate an $18 slice of cheesecake in the morning with a special coffee with chveis, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. So oz hu mashpia gam kein lechvoidoi. Then he invests in his kavod, in his glory. Avaloi ma shenitzrach loy la'atzmoi, but not what he needs for his own personal needs. Right? Bechlal, you know, when we talk about the halachos of kibud av va'em, I'm going to digress for a minute. So we know when you go mamish in the Gemara, you don't have to go too far. The Gemara describes an extreme case. What happens if his mother threw his wallet into the water? Right? Zarak arnaki liyam. They threw it in the, you know, the father or mother, they tore his clothing. So in Shulchan Aruch, right away the question becomes, wait a second. A child is not obligated to honor their parents with their own money. So whose wallet are they, whose money are they destroying? Right? So it's very interesting what happens in that discussion. In other words, there are two possibilities. One is that it's the parents throwing away their own money, and the reason why the child would be upset is because that's part of his future Yerusha. And the reason he can't stop them is because it's not his money. But if it would be his money, then he could stop them. And then the other side of that is that, let's say they did, you're not allowed to embarrass them, but you could take them to Bezdin, you could sue them if they threw your wallet in the water. You could sue them, right? So there becomes like this very a discussion about, listen, whose money is it, right? In other words, anything shebeguf, if it belongs to me, hands off, right? And that's what he's saying here. If it belongs to my pleasure, hands off. I will spend money as long as whatever is negeya to me is cared for. Then I'll be, you know, there'll be some additional things. V'yadua ki kol masha nofa lamata b'yoser sharshay mimakim gavaya yoser. Meaning this behavior of Yishmael, that he's such a pazron, and that he's spending that's all sharshay l'mayla yoser. It's a high shayrish. I have more copies here. 2 more, okay, thank you. 3 more. Oh, the Yuvan Zeh, he's going to deepen the understanding of this inyan of Yishmael, ki besifrei mikubolim v'kadmoinim, in the Sfarim of the Mikubolim, Nikra, the 3 Midas of the Tzad Yemin are referred to as Gedula, Gevura, the primary Midas, Gedula, Gevura, Tiferes. So Chesed is called Gedula. Hainu, Midas Chazdoi Nikra B'Shem Gedula. However, when it comes to the Eitz Chaim of Rab Chaim Vital, suddenly he does not refer to it as Gedula anymore. Rak Be'etz Chaim Nikra Hamida B'Shem Chesed. And that's the way it is in the Pasuk. K'meikim bePasuk L'cha Hashem HaGedula. It's also Gedula, not Chesed, v'ha'inyan. What's the difference? Ki be'etz Chaim medaber be'eses firis da'atzilis. Eitz Chaim is speaking about a limited Chesed. A Chesed as it relates to the world. A Chesed that responds to the needs. V'sham nikra eser sfiris dema bechinas bittul. In Atzilis, those spheres are called bittul. They're also bottled to Hashem. It's Le'ein soif baruch hu. Al derech v'nachnu ma. We are bottled to Hashem. Whatever Hashem's will is, that's what we are. And that is the chesed de Avraham. V'zeu b'chinas chesed la'Avraham. Aval amayla mihatzilus. Shehu be'ein soif baruch hu. Meaning, chesed de Atzilus is anoichi offer va'efer. Is kind from a place of humility. But l'maylo me'atzilus, this is what he's saying, that shviras hakelim, the shoirish, Yishmael is rooted l'maylo me'atzilus, where it's gedula. L'maylo me'atzilus, shubein seif baruch hu, lo'ishayich lo'imar. You can't say that it's finite. Ki elav yizbarich lo'ishayich lo'imar she'ashpia chesed. We can't say, oh, he's mashpia. Rak machamas keligdolasi ein cheker, because he's infinite. So v'teva atov lehitiv will ashpia chesed kel kol hayom. He's just hashpa b'li gvul. Ein kedz v'tachlis lechazde atov ulechayos nevroyim ubal gvul that the Eibishter gives life to nevroyim and to bali gvul and lashpia tuvei lishfolim ulechachiyos levnit koyim. Just to be mashpia to everyone, to the lowliest and to the most broken, all of that, that's l'mayla me'atzilus. In other words, from Atzilus perspective, you have to be a keli, you have to be bottled to the Eibishter, you have to be Avram Avinu to receive chesed. L'mayla me'atzilus, it's chesed to everybody. Ochen, kasher b'shviris hakelim nishtalshel lamata b'bal gvul. Through shviris hakelim, Yishmael got the trace of that. Oz, kishenistalku ha'eris de ein soif, when he doesn't feel elikus. Oz memele hakelim shenoflu lamata mata nizgala v'hepach. It comes out the opposite. Self-promotion, self-aggrandizement. Hainu, sheyiyah oiseh chesed, why is he kind? Lahar is godly v'ashrei, to show his wealth. V'chiyesh lo'irav. Umashpia, to whom does he give? Li'ish asher kofuf elov. Yeah, Commissioners by Leil. Shamash gavei hayeseh b'shorsho lo yuchal lavi lemata lidei gilui rak behepech yoser. It's mamish the opposite. In your chesed, you're crushing the other person. Ukamei ari. Ari is such a powerful animal, but the way it's nizgala lemata, it's not kosher. Bidvarim asurim ba'achila, you're not allowed to eat it. V'lachein tzarech hamidus hazu liyas medama oisa b'bchinas gevuros, that the chesed, the way it is by Yishmael, it's like a gevura. U'kameshim b'vur l'mayla. V'ayidei zeh memela yoyer er Hashem kenal v'dal. I'm sorry to understand exactly what he's saying here in this line, that in order for us to perform chesed properly, it has to almost be like we're being smitten. It hurts me. I'm being kind to someone by giving away my own hechrech. It's a gvura, it's not a chesed. It feels to me like a chesed. That's how we could become a vessel for the chesed Hashem. This is I wanted to read this inside. Now let's take a break for a minute and let's take a look at the Maimon and Likutei Torah.
Where is this from?
Yeah. From the Hanochos in the. You have it from Reb Hillel Paritcher and from Reb Pinchas Reizes.
This is in Kalacharim?
No. This is in the Hanochos. The Mamori Admar Azokin Hanochos. Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about it. So this Maimer, so first we have the Pasuk, that Eretz Yisrael is Eretz Harim Uvekois, it has mountains and valleys, and then it says, L'mitar Hashamayim Tishtamayim, that it's irrigated through rain. The Tzemach Tzedek right here in the beginning brings a whole series of sources. So I want to talk a minute about the sources that he brings. First of all, so I want to share some of the medrashim. One of the ideas in the medrash is that Eretz Yisrael. What's the point to say it's a land of mountains and valleys? It's not nice. That's not an optimal space. What kind of, you could live there? It's a psatayeles. What are we here to talk about the negative, qualities of Eretz Yisrael? It's no good. Anyone driving on an Egged bus to Tzfas, how many times you have to scream Shema Yisrael on the way up, on the way down? Yeah, like what are you trying to say? So he says like this. So the Medrash says, a regular country, you know how big it is. Eretz Yisrael, because of the mountains and the valleys, you can't really know, because every mountain. So it's only really when Hashem will, basically when it expands and it will all lay flat, then we're going to really discover how big Eretz Yisrael is. That's one Indian. The other thing he brings here from the Midrashim is that the Midrashim say, they ask a question. We say, what was created for what? Torah and the Yidden for the Torah, which one's for which? How about when we talk about the world, Eretz? See, of course, the world was created B'Shvil Yisrael. If that's the case, how could it be that the Eretz is La'olam and the Yidden, people pass? Doir Hoylech, Doir Ba. That's what the Pasuk says. Doir, right? Doir Hoylech, and the earth is La'olam Elamim. What is La'ad? What do you mean? The earth is here for us. What happened? Yeah, but right? So it has to do, why was the Eretz called Eretz? Because it ran to do Hashem's will. If we run to do Hashem's will, we'll be in that position too. And then it says, now that we mention it, there are all kinds of associations that we find that Eretz is like a human being. So one Medrash brings a whole list of psukim which describe the earth as with the anatomy of the earth. Like by Kairach, the earth had a mouth. And then there's a pasuk, Einei ha'aretz, that the earth has an eye. And then it says in the pasuk, Hazinu, Hazini eretz. So the earth has ears. And a whole bunch of psukim, one after the other, that the mamish, the whole body, all laid out on. Then he brings another pasuk. We find 12 times in the parsha the word eretz. Eretz chita, eretz asher loivim miskenus, eretz asher avaneha. Right? In those psukim, if you look in this week's parsha, you'll see that you have 12 times eretz keneged the yud beis shvatim, because every shevet had the properties of their land were unique, and they had the flavor of the fruit was different, and so there were basically characteristics in the eretz. So we find, 12 shvatim, 12 corresponding parcels of land, and then the earth has eyes and legs and hands and all of these things. So it's like human form. Another thing the Medrash says is that rain doesn't only give a bracha, it's not only about food. When people who are sick feel better when it rains, I don't know, what time of the day. And all kinds of things where we find that there's a bracha. Rain just represents bracha. Okay? All kinds of bracha. I don't know, people with knees, they have a maisa when it's gonna rain.
Arthritis.
Yeah. Yeah. So we akoponim all of these midrashim the Tzemach Tzedek brings by way of introduction into this mimer, that the hashpah of when we talk about hashpah on earth, it's not only about hashpah on earth, it's all about hashpah for us. And when it says that there are mountains and there are valleys, really we human beings have mountains and valleys, and really it's a discussion, it's interchangeable. When we talk about Eretz, we're also talking about people. Okay? Now let's take a look at the Maimer inside. The Havin, so it's 5 lines in. The Havin, Masha Kosov, Limitar. Ki mi motar havele lememar. It should have said, that it drinks not to, but from. It's irrigated from the rain from heaven. Okay. Hine ksiv. I'm just thinking about what to highlight, what to speak about. I want to for a moment. I want to jump to a lesson that we could take from what's happening here. The Rebbe, Tov Shin Chav Gimel on Yutas Kislev, the Rebbe has it this Maimer, and the Rebbe really, like, you know, what do I have to say? What am I going to say about the Rebbe? Just an incredible, beautiful Maimer. One of the things the Rebbe speaks about in the Maimer is that, of course, we always talk about Midas, that there's Chesed and there's Gvura. There's Sur Meira and there's Asay Toiv. So when we walk out in the world, when we're confronted by Ra, we understand that the Ra requires a measure of Gvura, Sur Meira. In other words, there are two types of interactions. There are gentle interactions, kind interactions, and then there are harsh interactions, Dechia. The Rebbe says, this Maimer, one of the things that the Alter Rebbe is coming to teach us, one of the lessons from this Maimer about Horim and the Kois, about the mountains and the valleys, is that Avraham Avinu, the Chesed of Avraham, he had two Horim. Avraham Avinu knew how to do Sur Meira also with Chesed. And the Rebbe says that's the Yutas Kislev part of the Maimer. And we just learned it in the Chitas a few days ago. What did the Alter Rebbe tell the Hasidim after Yutas Kislev? Not to be toothy with the Misnagdim. Right? To be humble. He says, what's the point of being humble? Just to shy away? He says, no, because that humility, which is kindness, that gentleness will bring around the Misnagdim. And that's how the Alter Rebbe ends the Igeris. And that's what the Rebbe says at the end of the Maimer. The Rebbe says, now we're going into a new Tkufa. The new Tkufa is that when we're confronted by evil, the way that we bring evil around is also through Chesed. And that's the two-pronged approach of Chesed. Sai, when we meet someone that's downtrodden, we meet someone that's humble, sometimes we meet someone who needs chizuk. So obviously, Chesed is the way. V'yaminoi techapkeni, that we have to embrace them. But the Rebbe says the chidush of what happens here in Katointi, what the Alter Rebbe is saying, and that's the punchline of this Maimer, which only the way the Rebbe sees this Maimer, is that Avraham Avinu, his Midas HaChesed, it took the steam out of the angry, out of the antagonistic people. They also came around through Chesed. So Chesed is the tool for everything. But there it says he was tough with them. Yeah, that's right. So the Rebbe is taking it a step further, and that's okay. That I have to give you today in Torah Shabbat. I couldn't. The copies didn't go that far. So that's in that Maimer of Yutas Kislev Tovshin Chav Gimel. Okay, so that now the Alter Rebbe begins here with a discussion about a choisem hamishapech. That when you have a seal, like if you have a seal on a letter, a wax, you pour wax and then you use a seal to make a stamp. So if the seal protrudes, then it'll be a recessed stamp on the page. And if the seal is inverted, then it'll be protruding. Right? It's in the wax, in the hot wax. That's the choisem hamishapech. I mentioned, we learn Chassidus all the time, so I mention all the time that Shamayim and Eretz are inverted. in Shamayim, the beams, they don't support the ceiling, they support the floor. Right? Mitzvahs are amudim. Tov reish chaf amudim. Mitzvahs are pillars. They're pillars that hold up the floor.
Like a string, like a rope. Meaning.
Right. So it's the opposite, right? And we speak about this with regards to Parshas Truma, with the Oroin. That the Oroin is the Merkava upside down.
You see that in big bridges, that the actual beams are supported by the wall.
Right? So what happens in the Merkava? The Oifanim, the Kruvim are on top. And then the Oroin is the wagon. And then the Odom is the Torah. Zeis HaTorah Odom. So it's an upside down Merkava. So there's in one of the Sifrei HaKabbalah, he says that the Ritzuos of Tefillin, they begin at the edge of the Ritzuos. In other words, obviously, where does the string begin? You can't say, oh, it ends here. It doesn't end here. Where does it start? So it's like you're threading the Ritzua, starting from the Tabur, up to the head, and then back around. So Ebazai, it's starting below. He says, oh, because it's the inverted, the way it is Lamaila and Zah, that's the way it's, so Tefillin are so this is the idea of the Chosem, of the inverted, the reversed seal. So what's Negei, reverse seal? So he says like this. I'll say a little bit outside, then we'll learn inside. When our connection to Hashem, when we activate a connection to Hashem, we become like a mountain. What does Hashem do? Hashem makes space for us. It's like putting something in a mold. Hashem responds to us. So a person, they daven and they're serving the Eibishter and they're reaching up. So the Eibishter, correspondingly, the Eibishter's Meir Oyer on that person, but the Oyer is called Oyer Sheikeya, like from the word Shkia. It's recessed. Hashem moves back to provide you with a boot, to provide you with a sleeve that's for you. Oh, this is your size light, it's for you. Then there's a Chesem Sheikeya. Chesem Sheikeya is when a person humbles themselves. When a person humbles themselves, then the Eibishter protrudes. When the Eibishter shines into your life, it's a much greater light. When it's sticking out for Hashem, it's much greater. So when the har, just in a simple way, what the Alter Rebbe is saying, a har is davening. A yid comes to the Eibishter and he's being mizbeinin and he loves the Eibishter and he's looking for ruchnius and he abandons taivus and he wants to be edel and he wants to feel spiritual and he wants to close his eyes and feel connected to ruchnius and he's mekusher to the Rebbe and he's in the zone and he wants to learn. He's just in a good place. You can imagine he's a Mesifta boy in the perfect place. Right? That's a har. He has an oyer from Hashem. Oh, okay. But then there's chesed, a person who says, I'm going to give away, I'm going to be mevatel myself, and I'm going to be kind to other people. I'm going to give away from my own bite. You know, like I have a few stories that I tell to highlight this nakuda. But you know, one is, I remember in the Holocaust Museum, they had these testimonies, video, someone, and one of the people there was describing how he was a partisan or was a woman, and she said, when we went out to get food, so we had to be so quiet, so discreet, and if we heard a twig crack behind us, we knew our reality was so stark. We said, if it's a goy, that means my life is over, I'm dead. And if it's a Jew, I'm going to split with you whatever I have. Whatever food I have, I'm gonna, right? In other words, that was the right, the state of mind. A yid, that's it. Well, I'm gonna live, you're gonna live. That's it, right? I don't remember who this was. He said him and his brother were in the concentration camp, and for some reason he worked where there was food. The kitzur. So he says when he would, it was his brother, and he was giving away half of his bread, but he was afraid that there's going to be a chashad who has a bigger piece. So he would cut the pieces in half, and he would put them somewhere, and he would tell his brother, pick, and I'll come back when you're done. Or he would tell him, you cut it. Right? Ad kedei kach, just incredible bittul, right? To not assert yourself whatsoever. When a person is goimel chesed in such a way, then the hashpah of the Eibishter is beli gvul. It's not corresponding to your davening. It's be'ein aroich. So a person should be able to place themselves in such a place. To be able to place yourself in such a place, it's not pashut. It's a tremendous madreg. Also, I want to mention the Rebbe brings from the Magid. It says on Noichi Offer Va'efer. He says, yeah, Offer Va'efer, it's very humble. But Offer Va'efer is the essence of the thing. After you burn it, that's what's left. That's his essence. So, that's the Anoichi. In other words, the har is fluff. Right? And the bittul, that's the true mitzias, is the bittul. It needs medafis, you have to fabring, you have to think about what that means. It's a tremendous, just to reflect on that. Yeah. So, okay, so let's take a look. I know we didn't learn too much inside, but hopefully you have some nekudas that you could take with you. So the pasuk says, Ki b'tzelem elikim asa sa'adam. The word tzelem, pirush tzelem hu tzura bailetes. It's a model that protrudes, that could make an indent in something else. She kishem adfisim ba, when you use it to make an imprint, nasa sheikeya, what is molded becomes recessed. Kimevur, like it's explained, gabiritzu is shiltfil and shorish. So it's explained, she'adam hu kechesem hamishapich. We are like a mirror that are reversed. It's inverted from the Eibishter. That mismoil shel maila nasa yamin lamata. Remember, we had this discussion. It's also connected to Ani Ledoidi, that Aryeh is Oisius Yira, and the Aryeh is on Tzad Yamin. Tzad Yamin should be Chesed, right? Shoyer Me'asmoil. The Ari is on the Yamin. So why is the Ari Yira? Because the Gilui of Hashem's Chesed causes Yira. The Gilui of Hashem's Yira, meaning withdrawal, causes Ava. Because he runs away, so now we pursue him. He brings from Mishnah's Chassidim, let's skip those two lines. For Inyan, the Ksiv, the Pasuk says, L'cha Hashem HaGdula. The who, that Gedula is Midas Chazdoi. Sheba Migdulasai. Hashem's chesed comes from his greatness. V'nepachu lamata. However, lamata, it's the opposite, it's inverted. I keep using the word inverted. I think, I don't know if everyone knows what. B'kitzur, it's like inside out, backwards. K'da'ashkechon be'Avram Avinu, olav ha'sholem, that it says, v'anoichi afar v'efer. To say this simply, l'maylo, because Hashem is great, He's mashpia. Lemata, the more humble someone is, the more generous they are. The more generous they are with their time. Who says, I don't have time for you? An arrogant person doesn't have time for anybody. Tehine ikir hachesed. What is true chesed? True chesed is la'ashpia mechayov, to give from your basic needs. V'lei memoisris shaloi, not to give from what's left over. Shezoi midas yishmael. Rakamesha matzinu. What do we find by Avram Avinu? How do you know that Avram Avinu gave away his own bread? It says that B'chazorosoi, when he returned, Para hakafoisov, he paid off his debts. Oh, why did he borrow money? In order to sustain all the people, he borrowed money. Sheloi loimar shechayecha koidmin. You don't say, no, I have to take care of myself first. Where does that come from? Mipnei shemeisim atzmai keshirayim. He makes himself secondary. V'zeu bechinas mayim. That's chesed. Sheyordim la'olam l'mokim nomuch. They go to a low place. I'm skipping the 3 lines. V'hine. Avas Hashem belev amoy. A yid that has experienced, pronounced love for Hashem, ke'esh boyara, like a flaming fire, kediksiv, rishpeh rishpeish, rishafeh rishpeish, and that is ascending. It's like a mountain. K'meish ha'esh, chafeitza betiva lalis l'mayla b'shorsha. A yid wants to be edel. He wants to be ruchni. He wants to be holy. Kain nafsheis b'nei Yisrael cheftzon ledovka b'Hashem. They want to be close to Hashem. Why do I have to go to work? Why do I have to be involved with goyim? What's gashmius? Sit in beis medrash and learn. I didn't make this up, right? I don't know if you're allowed to say it in the middle of a shir, right? How does the song go? If I were a rich man, I would spend hours every day with the wise, right? Whatever the lashon is, learning Torah, right? V'zeu bechinas histalkus. That's the inyan of aliyah. And where does it come from? Mismoil shalamayla. That nase yamin lamata. From the Eibishter's smoil, from the Eibishter's withdrawal, from our sense of distance. Ruchnius is far away. We yearn for Ruchnius. That's where we have our yamin, our fire. Skipping the bracket. Zeu shekosov. This is the meaning of Eretz Horim Uvekoi. So we're the Eretz, and we have mountains, and we have valleys, and all of this is bisarusa de lasata heino. We bring about all these emotions. Leficha hem beis bechinas, because it's isarusa de lasata. There are 2 things. There's eish and there's mayim. Pirush, reading the bracket. Ki Eretz, hi Knesses Yisrael. Eretz is the Yidden. And Eretz, the Yidden, yesh baharim. What are the mountains? Hainu isarusa de lasata, bebchinas rotzui. Yearning to be close to Hashem. Zeu inyan ki Avram shekarei har. Right? Avram referred to the Beis HaMikdash as the mountain. The Rebbe, by the way, speaks by Arichis about this Beis HaMikdash in every Yid. In other words, our avodah is building our Beis HaMikdash. Everything that we do is our divine service. It's all our Vishachanti. It's all our mountain. And then there's Harim Lashon Rabim. Why? Ki yesh kama bechinas har. There's Ava b'simcha and v'yesh b'merirus. In other words, love can be expressed in many ways. It could be expressed in rejoicing, and it could be expressed in warmth, in tears, also loving. Like it's explained in Aharim Yomushu and in Shir Hashirim in Samani Kechesem. V'derech klal. Yeah, but it's not atzvus. It says lebedike. It's motivating bitterness. Bitter is they like to translate it as melancholy. Yeah, this is In other words, that's the whole inyan that Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, the chiluk. He's speaking about ava b'merirus. V'derech klal horim hainu isarusa de lasata b'bchinas chosim boilet shemimata l'mayla, rising up to Hashem, and that's the inyan of Eish. Then there's because there are valleys. Hu b'chinas chosim sheikeya shemilmata. There's an indent. There's bittul. Hainu b'chinas bittul u'b'chinas yira b'chinas meisim atzmei keshirayim. That a person, I don't need anything. He's a minimalist. He could, he could sleep on the floor. He could eat from the leftovers. Whatever it is, he's okay. He's always okay. He doesn't need anything. I am Mashakosov in the Pirush Vaneshev Bagoy in the valley. We were in the valley. Over Kois Loshen Rabim, there are also multiple valleys. Kiyash Gamkein, there's Yira Tatoa and Yira Ilo. There are different dargis in Yira. Kiyadua, that the Dalid Eisias Avaya are Tchilu, Rechimu, Utchilu, Beisbam, Rechilu, the Chilu, that's the ladder. The Rebbe brings it in Parshas told us, Yitzchak ben Avram heard this Yitzchak, that there's Kabbalas oil, Reishis or Avoida, Yira, then Ava, Avazuta, then Avarabba, then Yirayillah. That's the ladder. The Efshir Shazel Harim Ubukois, Beis Bechinas Harim, Beis Bechinas Bukois, etc. Hine says the Alter Rebbe Isarusa de Leila. Hanimshach Mil Maila Ayidei Isarusa de Lasata Shebe Bechinas Mayim de Lasato. The Hashem's response to bittul, not to fire, to water. Gedoyla ve'elyoina yoser is much greater. Is much greater than the Isarusa de Leila Hanimshach Ayidei Eish. I just want to mention, recently they published a video of Rabbi Yoel talking about the Rebbe in the before Yud Shvat, and so he's talking about how they were trying to get the Rebbe to be, they were afraid. They were afraid to ask the Rebbe anything. He was afraid. Anything that would be like, oh, maybe you're going to take Nesias, So he said he was by a Fabrengen. The Rebbe Fabrengen in Tafshin Yud. And it left such an impact on him. He said because the Rebbe spoke Hergeshim, but the Rebbe spoke like a Baal Nigla, with complete seichel. The Rebbe was saying that his kashrus, the inyan of Yud Shvat, didn't do anything. All you need to do, he says, usually he would hear chassidim, that we're drunk, 3 hours into a fabrengen, the Rebbe was speaking with with a calculated, methodic, intelligent, like with a pashtus. And he was very taken aback. And then suddenly, the Rebbe's eyes opened like faucets. The Rebbe started, he says, tears were mamish running down his face, and then he was composed again, and he twice he cried. Yeah, and he said the Rebbe is a different guy, right? It left an and then he went back to his room and he wrote down the Fabrengen, right? So he went to his and then he mentioned it to one of the Elter Chassidim, to Beryl Chaskin. He mentioned him so Beryl was like, give it to me. I'll give it to the Rebbe. I'll already find a way. So then when Beryl Chaskin gave it to the Rebbe made a comment. The Rebbe said notes of what I say, that would have been okay before Yud Shvat too. And then he says later, that's how it happened, that when the Rebbe already the first Maimer, how did he come to write already the first Maimer? Because he was already writing and the Rebbe already knew. And he said then after the Basi Lagani and Yeshevas Beganim, the Rebbe was crying. He said the Rebbe went to the oil and read his Hanocha, pointing, mamish, reading the words. So that, I think it's a minor lotion. I think. Yeah. You could see that kind of Hanocha, right? But why am I saying this? All of us, we identify, we understand that with davening, b'avodah, with hisbonenus, with refinement, with speaking in a refined way, by being more edel, we become more ruchni. A person feels in their own experience that if they work on themselves for a little while, a few days, a few weeks, they feel different. They said extra tillin. They said it puts you in a spiritual space. Now comes Chassidus. Chassidus says, when you help another Yid, it refines you elef ba'amim kacha. The true way to truly be impacted by avodas Hashem is through chesed, it's through mayim, not through eish. And so imagine a person will say, look me in the eye with a level-headed gaze, and tell me, really, when I'm going to give tzedakah, I'm going to become more edel? Where is that? Where do we see that? So now the question becomes if we're being mashpia chesed like Yishmael or like Avram. Is it for self-aggrandizement, or it's with a place of bittul? But truly, the greatest connection to Hashem comes from bittul. I know we're on camera, but I would just say that for those parents, we're gonna Ma'ariv is at 9:10. That for those parents who their children bring out of them bittul in order to meet their needs, they will tell you that the connection to Hashem is much greater in bittul than in Metzias. It's not something that we wish on anyone, but yeah. So let's take a look. V'hine isarusa de leila hanimshach mil mailo al yidei isarusa de lasata shebibchinas mayim de lasata gedoyla ve'elyoyna yoser is much greater me isarusa de leila hanimshach al yidei eish. Okay, I want to skip it's about 8 lines. Okay, past the bracket. V'lachein irmi Yaakov mayim leyayin. That's why when Yaakov went into Yitzchak, he mixed water into the wine, because wine is like a mountain. It's tainug, it's simcha. Water is bittul. So he mixed the bittul into v'yiten lecha to receive a greater bracha. Lahamshich bracha al yena yoser. V'zehu, this is the meaning. The Alter Rebbe answers the question of the beginning of the Maimer of limitar hashamayim tishtamayim. Ka'adam ha'sheisa l'chaveroi sheyachzer v'yishtaloi. You give me, I'll give you. What the Eibishter is saying like this: if you'll give me mayim, then I'll respond to you with mayim. That's why it says limitar, to the water that you give, I'll bring water in response. And this is what he explains is the Aveda of Nisuch HaMayim, the whole Sukkos. Let's take a look in this. Pirush, Shezeu, that's our Aveda, Halas Mayin Nukvin, Lahamshich Mayin Duchrin, which are called Metar HaShamayim, true kindness and hashpah from Hashem. Look in the Maimerim B'chukei Seven Asati Gishmeichem ve'efsher al derech zeh yesh loimer gamkein. We could also use this to explain the inyan of Nisuch HaMayim, which was on Sukkos. Kol shiva simei achad. Inyan Nisuch HaYayin, pouring wine every day, that's simcha. That's like a chaysam beilet shemil mata. That's like the fire. That's like avarabba, b'china simchas hanefesh b'avarabba Hashem. That's the shir halaviyim alayayin every day. Aval nisuch hamayim, that's the chochma, that's the bittul, koyach ma. B'chinas bittul shu b'chinas chaysam sheikeya shemil mata. A person recesses themselves. They humble themselves. Bishmini Atzeres Oimrim, we say Meirid HaGeshem, we say Eibishter. A whole Sukkos, we humbled ourselves. Now Meirid HaGeshem, give true hashpah. Hamshachas mayin duchrim milmayla lias niklat gili eire in soif baruch hu b'neshamas Yisrael mikerev ish v'leiv amik, that there should be true infinite light of Hashem. Look in the Maimer Torah Tziva, and that's the meaning of li mitar hashamayim tishtamayim shekedei lahamshich hamshach al yenezu, in order to elicit mitar hashamayim shebishmini atzeres. Hu al yedei nisuch hamayim b'chag HaSukkos. It's through the water, through the humility, and that's the mashal to Adam asheise lachaveirei kedei sheyachzer v'yishtaloi. I give you that you give me. Now he goes to Tashlich for a minute. V'hine al piza yuvan apostle. Now we'll understand that the Yud Gimel Midas Haracha Memikel Kamoicha Neisei Avein Lish'eris Nachlosei. Amru Razal in Perek Beis Deresh Hashanah. What is She'eris? Hainu Lemishem Esim Atzmei Keshirayim. Someone who makes themselves secondary. V'yesh Levai Tchila. Now we have the Maimer which connects to this that we learned before. Yesh Levai Tchila Shebesifrei Mekubolim Akadmoinim. In the early Kabbalists, Nikra HaMidas Al-Yonis, the Midas are called Gedula, Gevura, Tiferes. Hainu, Hashem's Chesed is called Gedula. Rak Be'etz Chaim of Rav Chaim Vital, Niskar HaKoil Chagas, Shenikra HaMidah B'Shem Chesed. Now if you look in the Pasuk it says, L'cha Hashem HaGedula ve'HaGvura. So why is it that in the Eitz Chaim, why does he call it Chesed? V'ha'inyan. Ki be'emes, be'ein soif baruch hu, in oirein soif, beyond Atzilus, loy shayach loymar, she'ashpia chesed. It's not appropriate, it doesn't belong there to say, oh, the Eibishter is mashpia chesed. It's just, he's infinite, so anything comes from him. Rak machmas kelik dolose ein cheker. Ukemeisha kasuv erech hapayim, ugdol chesed. It's all part of the Gedula. In the presence of the king there's life. Since he's in the darga of Arich Ampin, so there's also Gdol Chesed. That's why there's no limit. And that's why it's called Rav Chesed. That's the way it is in Ein Sof. Hashem Ligdulase Ein Cheker. Kadmei L'chol Akdumim Ki Goi Go. It's beyond Nivroim, beyond Eilam Hazeh. L'chein, that's why it says L'chol Havaya Daike Hagdula. Hashenkim ben Nivroim for us Leishayach Midazu. Me'ach Hashem be'emes Kaloch Shili. V'chol ha'ishtalshlu Suketipa L'gabe Yukyainus. V'yosef Ein Aroich, etc. Lachein bechol sitra de kedusha hu bechinas bittul va'ayin. That's why in kedusha, recognizing that infinity, everything is bottled. Kalach hashivi, and that's why it's the opposite of gedula. But lachein nikra Eretz Yisrael b'shem Eretz Canaan. Canaan means hachna ubittul, humility, like he explained earlier, and that's chesed la'Avram. And so to Yaakov Avinu said, Katointi Mikoil HaChasodim. Katointi Mikoil HaChasodim, the taich of Katointi is that Hashem's chesed made me small. I was reduced. Why does he say in Eitz Chaim chesed and not Gedula? Because the Eitz Chaim is speaking about Atzilus. In Atzilus, the Kelim B'Bchinas Gvul V'Tachlis, we're looking for a mathematician. Reish Lamed Vav Alofim Revavais Parsois. 236,000 times 10,000. Yeah? No, just add 4 zeros. Yeah? So and that's why it's called Ze'er Ampin. Mashenken Arich Ampin Pnimius HaKeser is Ein Sof. I just want to read. Let's skip the 4 lines before the end of this paragraph. I just want to read these. Okay, V'ha'adam. You see it? There are 2 midos of chesed. There's toihu and there's tikkun. He says, V'ha'adam tzarich lidabek b'midos da'olam ha'tikkun. Chesed dema. Chesed of bittul. Not to be kind as a show-off, but to be kind as a way of being humble. Why do I deserve? There's a fine yid. If I have, he should also have. V'lachein, afilu magia le'ireyesa me'agmilas chesed. Even by you giving away the money, it's going to hurt you. It's going to take away an opportunity. But lo yimnas atzmei, don't hold back miligmal chesed. Kivan shesibas hachesed, what causes you to be kind is machmas shemesim atzmei kishirayim chulu kanal, that we're making ourselves secondary. We'll finish here. I want to thank everyone for being mishtatev. Thank you for your patience and for being such good listeners. And the Eibishter should help that Hashem should meet our chesed with chesed ein sof.